A chilling scene in the Middle East today. There was a major attack by Iran. Nearly 200 missiles rained down on Israel. The sky lit up as rockets breached the Iron Dome, prompting the military to urge citizens to take shelter. Iran's response to the war in Gaza and the killing of senior leaders of Hamas and Hezbollah comes as there's been heightened fears of a full-scale war in the Middle East. Israel saying tonight that Iran made a big mistake and will pay.
A few hours ago, Iran, for the second time in the space of 5 months, launched a direct attack on Israel, including some 200 ballistic missiles. This is totally unacceptable, and the entire world should condemn it. Initial reports suggest that Israel, with the active support of the United States and other partners, effectively defeated this attack.
Manisa Danabalan joins us live to break this all down. Manisa, it's a developing situation tonight, so what do we know so far?
Nicole, Israel was aware that Iran was preparing to launch a ballistic missile attack, and the military said they were ready for any strike, but it's unclear if they expected it to happen so soon. The missiles from Iran lit up the sky in Tel Aviv, Israel estimating that 180 projectiles were launched.
Because this is the second round of air raid sirens we've seen, and if you look over here in the distance, you're seeing where the intercepts are going up into the sky, and it would be, just to be clear, from that direction from the east. And again, listen, this gives you a sense of the air defenses all around Tel Aviv, multiple layers, and this up further in the sky where I'm pointing here, that's the altitude where they're making impacts.
The country's military intercepted the attack, but some missiles hit parts of central and southern Israel. Sirens and explosions were heard. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it targeted 3 Israeli military bases around Tel Aviv. Officials urged everyone in Israel to take shelter. People were seen taking cover wherever they could. Shortly after the attack, in a post on X, the Iranian mission to the United Nations wrote Iran's response to the terrorist acts of the Zionist regime has been duly carried out. Should the Zionist regime dare to respond or commit further acts of malevolence, a subsequent and crushing response will ensue. People in Beirut and Gaza were heard cheering and celebrating.
I've been talking about World War III for a long time, and I don't want to make predictions because the predictions always come true. We're not going to make, but they are very close to global catastrophe. We have a non-existent president and a non-existent vice president who should be in charge, but nobody knows what's going on.
U.S. President Joe Biden ordered the military to help defend Israel from Iran and shoot down missiles targeting the country.
Make no mistake, the United States is fully supportive of Israel.
We are still working with the IDF and the authorities in Israel to assess the impact of the attack. But at this time, and I stress at this time, we do not know of any deaths in Israel. We are tracking the reported death of a Palestinian civilian in Jericho in the West Bank.
A restaurant north of Tel Aviv rocked by the attack was in shambles. Officials in the U.S. and Jordan say their teams intercepted Iranian missiles during the attack. The IDF said they weren't aware of any injuries and warned that the attack will have consequences.
We will consult with the Israelis on next steps in terms of the response and how to deal with what Iran has just done, and we will continue to monitor for further threats and attacks from Iran and its proxies.
The escalation in the Middle East was also top of mind for officials here in Canada.
Will the Prime Minister state clearly that Israel has the right to defend itself by defeating Hezbollah, Hamas, the IRGC, and all the other terrorists?
Of course, we condemn them unequivocally. These attacks from Iran will only serve to further escalate the region, and therefore that is why I've been in contact with my Israeli counterpart this morning, and I've been in contact with many G7 foreign ministers as well as Arab countries' foreign ministers. This is a very dangerous time for the Middle East, and we need to make sure that this war stops.
We are still working towards a ceasefire and diplomatic resolution of this conflict.
And at the same time, Canada is taking the steps that are necessary so that we will be able to assist Canadians in the region.
This evening, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau posted on X saying Canada unequivocally condemns Iran's reckless attack against Israel. We fully support Israel's right to defend itself. In a statement, the United Nations Secretary General condemned the escalation, saying this must stop. We absolutely need a ceasefire. Moments before the massive barrage of rockets, 2 people opened fire in a neighborhood in southern Tel Aviv, killing at least 6 people and wounding 12 others. Israeli police killed the 2 suspects. Nicole, the Pentagon says today's attack was twice as large as its attack back in April. And on the other hand, Iran's president warning that it's only a portion of their power. The U.S. will be coordinating with Israel on the response. So how this will play out, we'll just have to wait and see. And Manisa, let's continue our coverage. Joining us now is Jane Bolden, professor at the Royal Military College of Canada. Jane, the question on the minds of many tonight, how might Israel respond to this attack today?
So that is the big question at the moment, what Israel will do next. And much will depend in terms of whether we head towards a wider war on the nature of the Israeli response. So if it chooses to hit Iran directly in response, then we're ramping up into a new situation where we're really in a direct Israel-Iran conflict that could potentially escalate into something much bigger. If it responds by doing more in Lebanon and sort of picking and choosing smaller scale, I mean, it sounds terrible to call them smaller scale things. Every aspect of this conflict has tragic overtones, but if it has a lesser response that doesn't involve Iran directly, then it sends a signal that it wants things to stay tamped down, roughly speaking. It's obvious that the Israeli incursion into southern Lebanon is going to continue, but that may be the only thing that they move forward with, in addition to a few other smaller things.
You know, many are concerned online with this being the start of World War III. Is that a fair assumption to make here?
It's absolutely fair to be worried about that. I think that in the first instance, the big concern at the moment is a regional war. And absolutely, anytime you have a major regional war, and a Middle East war is by definition that, you have that risk of it sliding into something bigger. A major regional war in the Middle East is huge in and of itself. And that's why we've been seeing the kind of diplomacy and responses from other states and from the UN Secretary General that we've been seeing for even before today, right? There was a lot of statements and a lot of activity trying to keep the two sides from escalating. And that hasn't been achieved. And in that context, it's absolutely fair and legitimate to worry that this might be already beyond that level of control. The next few days will tell us that.
And Jane, I want to go back in time a little bit here. Iran fired missiles at Israel back in April in retaliation for a deadly strike on the Iranian consulate in Syria, killing top commanders there. How is this attack today different from the one we saw just months ago?
One of the key differences this time is the types of missiles being used. And we apparently have seen a lot more, in fact, a considerably higher percentage of the missiles coming in as ballistic missiles. And as probably people know, Israel has a very strong air defense system. But if you're going to overcome that, it's more likely to be breached by a ballistic missile. So Iran using more ballistic missiles sends a signal of seriousness and also a signal of its willingness to know, how to put it, its willingness to have missiles get through and wreak destruction, including on the civilian population. It's willing to have that risk and may even have wanted it. Whereas it's a funny thing to say, Iran sends these missiles April and now, knowing that most of them aren't going to get through. In fact, knowing that almost all of them aren't going to get through. And so we're looking at those minor shifts for clues. And it seems like there's one there in the use of ballistic missiles this time.
Certainly a shift and a further escalation now. Jane, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Trending Now.
Thanks for having me.